Everybody, happy Friday. Welcome to Habitat Demos for December 8th, 2017. We have just one demo today, but as usual, it's going to be a good one. Chris is going to show us something with runtime environment variables. So take it away, CM.
All right. So today I'm going to do a demo of the new runtime environment variables feature that we have. As you can see, there's a blog post walking through sort of the high points of it, but I'll give you the live version. So can you see this diagram?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah? Okay. So I've made a little sample network of applications here, or packages, that will illustrate how this feature works. What the feature is, it allows you to specify environment variables within a Habitat package, and then based on the dependency chain of your application, we can sort of collect all these environment variables and expose them to your service automatically at runtime. We already do this with your path variable. So all the binaries that all of your dependencies have, we collect those up and make sure that they're on the path of your service when the Habitat supervisor starts it up, so that you don't have to, for example, in your run script, manually manage your path variable. So like we handle all that for you, which is great, but there's additional environment variables that you might like to have automatically managed for you as well. Key examples of this would be things like Java's class path, or Python's Python path. Like if all of your dependencies, like if there's a Python library here in one, and then another library in another, you would like to ideally just have that automatically exposed to your service. So that's the scenario that we've got here. I've got two packages, env base 1 and base 2. That's sort of at the bottom of our dependency chain. Then we have env middle, which depends on both of them. And then we have our main app up at the top that depends on env middle. So this is the whole runtime dependency tree of our main application. And then just to make things interesting, we'll have a build dependency for our main application. So as I go through this, like this is sort of the overall picture that you should be thinking about. So let's take a look at some code here. So I'm in a studio, and we'll just take a look at the plan for base 1. So that was the first one of our dependencies, way down at the bottom of our dependency tree. So it doesn't do anything interesting because this is a demo, and the main thing that we care about is the environment variables. So we have this new callback called doSetupEnvironment, where we have some new functions that you can use to declare or modify environment variables. And we do this because in order to make sure that everything behaves appropriately, like we examine your dependencies first and then assemble an environment based on their environments, and then on top of that we can layer in what our current package is doing. And so we have a new callback function that does this just at the right point in the overall build process. It takes place immediately after all your dependencies have been resolved and downloaded, but before anything else happens. So this one, we don't have any dependencies, so we're just going to say, I would like the environment variable, my value, to have a value of base 1. And I would also like my Python path to be this directory within my package. I'll call it my Python libs. So that we're going to put that on our Python path. So let's go ahead and build this. All right, so it's going to go through and build. So we've got some new metadata files that get generated now. One of them is called Runtime Environment. And as you might expect, this is where all that information ends up getting stored. So we can see here that we have a path variable, which we, like I said earlier, we automatically manage that for you. And we go back up here and look at the plan. We can see I have a bin directory named bin, and that automatically gets added to our path for us. We have a my value environment variable that has a value of base 1, and then our Python path has our Python path in it. So that's all well and good. Moving over to our other base dependency, it's largely the same. We're just we've got some a different variable in here. We're calling it my path, and this is a path. So we're going to build this, and it's going to be largely the same as the last one. And you can see all the output is as you would expect. So that's sort of a basic look at just building a package using this. But it starts to get interesting when we look at how the dependencies layer together. So we're going to move up our tree to ends middle, which has dependencies on both of these packages that we just built. So let's take a look at its plan file. All right, so we have declared our dependencies here. I'll skip over this for just a second, but we'll come back to it. So we'll take a look at our setup environment callback. So we are setting my value to overwritten by middle 1, just to show that that we can set values that have already been set. And we'll look at this F argument in a moment. That's we're going to force a change. So if you recall, back in our second dependency, we set my path to this is a path. And now we want to add on to that path. So we're using a new function called push runtime env. So we're going to push wow onto our path. So when this is all said and done, our path should say, wow, this is a path. And similarly, we're going to push another value into our Python path. This is another Python application. We have our own libs that we want to expose to whatever is ultimately consuming it. So let's go ahead and build this. I'm telling it not to install dependencies because these fake packages aren't on Builder. So I'm basically telling it just to use the stuff that is here that I've just built. Okay, so now we start to get some more interesting logging output. So we're starting to resolve these different environment variables from our dependencies. And so there are different approaches to how that happens depending on the kind of variable you have. So things like my value, that's just a single value, in Habitat terms, we're calling it a primitive value. And then you have values that are like our path variable and our Python path variable. Those have multiple values that are separated by some delimiter, and we call those aggregate values in here. And when we are assembling, when we're layering these environments on top of each other, Habitat knows some well-known environment variables already. So like it knows that Python path is one of these aggregate type variables, and when it's layering things together, it needs to push values together, separated by a colon. So it knows how to do that. But then there might be things like my value, which it doesn't know about. That's just something that this particular program, this particular application that we're building might care about. So when it's layering things together, it's going to, by default, treat it as though it were a primitive type. If that's not how you want it to behave, however, you can provide a little, basically like a type hint in your plan to say like, no, you need to treat this as though it were like one of these aggregate variables. So that's what we do here with my path. So let's see. It also gives you additional output here. It tells you when it's layering things together exactly what's going on, so you can troubleshoot things if things go wrong. Let's take a look what the final result of that operation is. All right, so we can look at our path here. We can see ends middle is the thing that we were building. That's on the front of our path. And then base 1 and base 2 are also in there. So we're building up things from the bottom up. You can see that we've overwritten this environment value that we wanted to overwrite. And our Python path is similarly composed up of things that we're exporting from this package, as well as all of its dependencies. So you can see end middle my Python libs, end base my Python libs, and base 1's Python libs. And then we are also able to successfully build up this my path variable that Habitat knows nothing about, but it did it in the right way. So we have wow pushed onto the front. So that's how we start to layer things up. So we're going to go ahead and build the last one. So we're going to build our build dependency. I'm going to show you how build dependencies play into this too, because they can affect the environment in your build process as well. So let's look at that. All right, so it depends on, it has a runtime dependency on get and make, just to make it interesting. And then we're going to export a Habitat true value. All right, so all right, so that built. And we have make and get on the path there, and Habitat is set to true. All right, we're in the home stretch now. We're going to take a look at our main app. We depend on our middle application that we just built, and then we have a build dependency on our build dep. And as always, we're going to push some more values onto our Python path. So let's go ahead and build this. All right, so what we will see, oops. All right, so we have continued adding on to our growing path. You can see we've got our dependents, our binaries, middles, base 2, and base 1. So everything in our dependency tree is pulled into the path. We're still getting this overwritten value because we didn't overwrite it ourselves. And Python path is growing just as path did. So that all is going to be exposed in our runtime environment. And you can also take a look at the environment that this was built with. So any binaries that we make are sort of by definition on our path in our build environment. And we've also got make and get, which, if you remember, our build dependency depended on. So we're pulling in our build dependencies runtime environment because it's running as we're building. And all of these values are made available along with the runtime values. Everything, it's more layering. These are the things, the extra things that get added when we build, but they're not going to be present when we run. So the final thing, we will install this and run it in our supervisor. So this has a basic run hook that is just going to export its runtime environment. So the supervisor is going to look, it's going to see, this runtime environment information that our program has, and it's going to automatically set up the environment of your service to use that. So we're going to install that. And then if we take a look at our supervisor log, all right, we can see here, hello from Habitat. Here's my runtime environment. You can see our path has all of our dependencies on it, as well as some basic ones that are brought in by the supervisor itself. We have our overwritten my value. Our Python path is fully intact, and we've got our special custom path. And all of that was automatically managed by Habitat through the build process. The supervisor automatically exposed it, and I didn't have to go messing with any of these variables in my run hook. It was just, hey, here's my environment. So all of that Habitat manages for you. And so that is the end. Thank you.
Yeah, that looks absolutely amazing, and seems to work so seamlessly. So really good work on that. The main scenario there is if you have something like a class path that you want to propagate all the way through to your packages, this lets us do that now. So that's super cool.
Yeah.
And is this out in 50.3 yet, or is this going to be in the next release?
No, this is out in Habitat 0.50.3.
0.50.3. Awesome. Awesome. All right. That's it for the demos today. Thanks, everyone. See you next week. Bye.